and modify this query here. Let's go into Configure. I want the distinct set of states from the authors table, and I just need the get data. Let's call it get states. And we'll test this one. Perfect. So those are the unique states in our database. There's 8 states. And I can give this a more meaningful name instead of authors. I'll just call it state list. Great, so we have our data set containing 2 table adapters with 1 query apiece. Now to use the table adapters, we go back to our default page. Now we can start using our design surface. We'll start by bringing over a drop-down list. This will hold the list of our states. By clicking that, it will allow our page to receive whenever I change the option or choose a different state, it'll refresh the page and it'll post back and allow everything to rebind correctly. So we have to bind it, first of all, to a data source. So I'll choose New Data Source. And here's where you can go directly to Access or directly to a SQL database or an XML file, but I'll choose the one in the middle. Now I'm going to bind to an object, in this case, our data table adapters. Now here's where I could have written all this code manually. I could write a traditional middle tier piece of C# or VB.NET code that returns an array or list of states without doing any database work at all. I could just hard code it using arrays and things. But we went the dataset route because it supports a few other things for us automatically, namely the editing and updating features. So that's why we went with the dataset. So I'll choose the state list table, and all this looks good. Even the defaults are fine. Good. Now, let's drop on a grid view. So under data, we have a lot of new controls here to help us manage data. The biggest one, the one I like the most, is the grid view. It's very flexible. You have lots of formatting options for it. I'll choose that one. And again, like we did with the drop-down list, I need to bind this to a data source. Same idea, but this time we're going to bind it to the author table adapter. Now if you remember, this is the one that requires a parameter for the state. So in the next step, we will bind that state to a parameter. You can see I have a lot of options. I'm going to bind it to the control that's already on this page, the drop-down list. Now you can see on this page, now that we've configured it, we have a lot of options. We can turn on paging and all this stuff. Let me just save it. I better make sure this works. So let's view it in a browser. And there's our California authors, Kansas, Oregon. Perfect. So this is working just how we expected. Let's go back to our page and let's play around with some of these columns here. Let's say I want to turn off a few. Like I don't really need to see the phone number and the zip code right now, so I can turn those off. I can turn on paging and sorting, and I can even add a new column. Let's say I want to add a hyperlink. And we'll use this to get the details for the particular author where we can go and edit. So let's add a new column called details, and it's going to get the hyperlink URL from the author ID. So we're going to have to create a page. I probably should have created it first, but we're going to create a page called details.aspx, and we're going to pass it the field author ID 0. So if the author ID is 5, the query string will look like details.aspx author ID. Let me just show you. Okay, before we test this hyperlink out, let me just go ahead and create the page it's linking to. So we'll add another page called details. And I want to show, let's say I want to show a particular author, the author that's selected. Now I don't have a query that will just return one author, so I need to go back to my data set and modify the authors table here. I'm going to add a new query to the table adapter to return a specific author. So I'll just modify this existing one, or the copy of that one, and call it, say I want all the authors where the author ID equals a parameter that's passed in, the author ID. And I just need the get data by author ID. That gives me a new method, which let's test it real quick. So I want author ID 4. Perfect. I'll save that. Let's go back to our details page. And the design mode, I'm going to use another data control This time instead of grid view, I'll use the details view. And I want the same idea, you can do the formatting and bind it to a data source. Choose the object, choose the authors table adapter, but now I should have two choices, get data and get data by author ID. Notice behind the scenes we also have an update, insert, and delete statement. We're going to be using those this time. Now the author ID parameter is coming from the query string, author ID, and we'll save it, and for this page we will enable the editing. Finally, to make it easy to get back to the main page, I'll just drag the default.aspx page on here to create a hyperlink, and let's go test this out. Bring it up in a browser, and there's our list, and it's sortable. We turned on sorting and paging. So let's go into Cheryl Hunter's details here. That's author ID 20, and this has the zip code and the phone number, and I can edit these as well. So we can change the number to perfect. All right, and hit the update button, and there are the changes. If we go back to the default page, we should see where it should go on the second page, Cheryl Hunter in Richmond. Great. So actually, without any code, we're able to get a master details page laid out where there's some kind of filtering going on that's coming from the database. We have editing and paging and sorting, all with all done in about 15 minutes. It's a pretty quick demonstration of the new power of the data set, and also the overall data features and creating databases, all within Visual Web Developer 2005.